All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a category of crime that is way deeper than just someone stealing your credit card. We're talking about crimes against your actual identity. Acts that attack the very foundation of who you are in the eyes of the law. Your entire legal existence. Seriously, just stop and think about that for a second. Forget about your stuff, your car, your phone. What's that one core thing that defines your place in the world? It's your story. Right? Your official story, the one the law recognizes. And that's exactly what we're digging into today. What happens when someone tries to steal, forge, or just completely wipe out that story?
Okay, so to really get our heads around these crimes, we've got to start with this core legal idea called civil status. The best way to think about it, it's like the official blueprint of your life in society. It's the master document the state looks at to know who you are, where you come from, and what you're entitled to.
So what is civil status, really? And let's be clear, this has nothing to do with how much money you have or your social status. It's your official position within the whole web of family and society. It's a set of legal tags that define you, that unlock your rights, and that assign your duties as a citizen. It's basically the system that tells the government, hey, this person is real, they exist, and here's how they fit into the puzzle of society.
So that might still sound a little abstract, right? But it breaks down into some really tangible, really important stuff. We're talking about your name and your family tree. We're talking about your right to inherit property. It's your citizenship, your legal recognition by the state itself. When you put all this together, it's like your legal anchor in society. It's what keeps you officially grounded.
Okay, so if that's your blueprint, how can somebody mess with it? Well, the first type of crime we're going to look at corrupts the blueprint right from the very start, at birth. We're not talking about stealing an identity that already exists. We're talking about creating a fake one from thin air, or making a real one vanish. It's all about faking the family tree.
And you better believe the law takes this stuff incredibly seriously. There's basically this legal shield, Article 347, and its whole job is to protect a child's origin story. It makes it a crime to do anything that messes with or destroys the truth of where a child came from, because the law knows that this is the absolute cornerstone of their identity and their rights.
So how do people actually do this? How do they commit this crime? Well, the law is super specific. It breaks it down into three main moves, three distinct criminal acts. First, there's simulation, which is basically faking a birth. Then you've got substitution. Yeah, the whole switched at birth thing. And finally, there's concealment, hiding a child to make them legally disappear. Let's break them down.
All right, first up, simulation. This one is pure fiction. It's like writing a novel, but for a real person's life. Someone is claiming a child belongs to them when in reality it doesn't. Just imagine a wealthy couple that needs an heir to get an inheritance. So they go out, illegally get a baby, and then file a birth certificate saying the wife gave birth. That birth never happened. They've simulated it to create a totally false legal reality for that child.
Okay, next we have substitution. Now, if simulation is about making up a story from scratch, substitution is like taking a true story and just rewriting the main character. This is the classic movie of the week switched at birth scenario. It's the deliberate act of swapping one baby for another. And the damage here is it's double-sided, you know? One kid gets a fake identity and the other one gets robbed of their true one.
And that brings us to the third act, concealment. And honestly, this one might be the most malicious of them all. Here, you're not faking an identity or even swapping one. You are actively trying to destroy a real, legitimate one. It's about taking a child and hiding them away with the specific purpose of cutting all their legal ties, their name, their family, their right to inherit anything. The goal is to literally turn a person into a legal ghost. Poof, gone.
Now get this, the law has a special view of professionals, doctors, surgeons, public officers, who get involved in these schemes. If they use their position to help commit these crimes, they don't just get the same prison sentence. They also get hit with something called temporary special disqualification, which is a fancy way of saying they get kicked out of their profession for a while. It's the system's way of screaming, you abused a position of trust, and that comes with an extra heavy price.
Okay, so we've talked about faking an identity from scratch. But what happens when someone decides to just steal one that's already out there? This brings us to the second major crime, usurpation. If that first crime was like forging a new blueprint, this is like finding someone else's perfectly good blueprint and just slapping your photo right on top of it. It is a hostile takeover of a person's entire legal life.
So here's the official breakdown.
Usurpation of civil status is basically the crime of wearing someone else's legal identity like a costume. But this isn't for a party. You are actively and falsely claiming to be someone else in every way that matters to the law. It's not just pretending. It's trying to actually take over their rights, their family connections, the whole shebang.
And here is where things get really, really interesting from a legal standpoint. With usurpation, the act of pretending to be someone else, that's only half the story. The other half, and you could argue it's the more important half, is why. Why are you doing it? Because your motivation, your intent, is the one thing that can change everything.
And this brings us to one of the most fundamental ideas in all of criminal law. The difference between the physical act of a crime and the mental state behind it. The what you did versus the why you did it. In law, they have specific names, and understanding the difference is absolutely critical.
Think of pretty much any crime as having two parts, two essential ingredients. On one side, you have the actus reus, that's Latin for the guilty act. It's the physical thing you did, the what. So in our example, it's the act of showing up and claiming to be the long-lost heir. But on the other side, you have the mens rea, the guilty mind. This is your mental state, the why. So are you claiming to be the heir because you want to get your hands on the family fortune? See, that why, it changes absolutely everything.
And that right there, that's the whole ball game. The law isn't just a simple machine. It actually looks at what was going on in your head. This guilty mind, this mens rea, is what separates a genuine mistake from a malicious crime. And as you're about to see, that difference can mean a few years in prison versus more than a decade.
Okay, so that brings us to the bottom line, the consequences. We've taken apart these crimes against identity, so now let's look at the punishment. How does the legal system put a price on something so fundamental? Well, the penalties are serious, and they really tell you a lot about what our society values and protects.
So first up, let's look at faking that family tree under Article 347. Doesn't matter if it's simulation, substitution, or concealment. Look at that. They all get you prison major. That's a serious chunk of time. We're talking 6 to 12 years in prison, plus a fine. And the fact that the penalty is the same across the board, that's really telling. The law is saying all three of these acts are equally damaging because they all poison a child's identity right at the source.
But now check this out. Let's look at usurpation, stealing an identity. This is a perfect example of that guilty mind, that mens rea in action. If you steal someone's identity with the intent to defraud them, to steal their money or property, you're looking at that same heavy sentence, 6 to 12 years. But look at the second line. If you do the exact same act, but without an intent to defraud, the penalty drops way down to prisión correccional, which is about 2 to 6 years. The physical act is the same, but the why, the intent, that can literally slice the maximum prison time in half. That's how much intent matters.
Just let that number sink in for a second. 12 years. That's the max for these crimes. That tells you that the law puts these offenses, stealing or destroying someone's legal reality, right up there with other incredibly serious felonies. It's a statement about just how fundamental and sacred our civil status really is.
So let's wrap this up with a final thought. We've established that your civil status is so much more than just a piece of paper in a file somewhere. It's your official story. And these crimes are all about someone else trying to hijack that narrative, trying to become the author of your life for their own selfish reasons. And it really makes you think about the incredible value of something we probably almost never consider, the simple, provable, legal truth of who we are.